Have you ever reached a point where you knew something had to change, but had absolutely no idea what to do next? This is one of the most disorienting places to be. And for a lot of people, not knowing the full path is exactly what keeps them from taking any step at all. In this video, I'm going to show you why waiting for full clarity is actually keeping you stuck, how the integrity wheel maps the threshold between seasons of life, and the one specific question you need to ask to take your first honest step. Hi, I'm Jessica. This is where a lot of people get stuck in the unknown that is inherent with change. Not in the denial stage, not in the panic stage, but after that. You've already admitted that something in your life does not fit the way it used to. But now you are standing in a different kind of discomfort. You do not trust yourself to move without certainty, so your mind starts bargaining. Once I know exactly what I want, I'll move. Once I have a full plan, I'll act. Once I can explain all of this clearly, then I'll do something about it. That sounds reasonable. But for a lot of people, it becomes another way of staying still. Because real transitions rarely begin with full clarity. They begin with honest, partial clarity. You know one thing is over, or one thing feels false, or one thing can no longer be carried the same way. And that is usually enough to begin. The problem is that most people do not recognize that as a starting point. They keep waiting for the full picture because the threshold of change is vague. Waiting for full clarity before moving is not caution. A lot of the time, the uncertainty itself is doing the work, and the waiting is just giving it more room. If that is where you are right now, would you take a moment to tap the like button? It helps this reach people who are trying to move honestly without forcing certainty. And here is why that is so hard. A lot of people were trained to act only when the answer looks clean. That is not how most change actually works. Sometimes you can tell something is ending without yet knowing what is beginning. That does not mean you are lost. It means you are in a threshold. That is part of what the integrity wheel helps make visible. The wheel maps the seasons of life, a beginning, a middle, a reckoning, and end. Some seasons are about building, pushing harder, taking action. That works well in summer. But there are other seasons where that same approach just creates more strain and perpetuates a cycle of rigidity and denial. If you are in a season where something old is falling away and something new is not yet clear, the task is not to force a plan. It is to get honest about what no longer fits and stop crowding the space before clarity has had time to form. What I've observed in more than 15 years of clinical practice is that people often expect the next step to feel decisive or fully formed. But the first, honest step is usually quieter than that. It may be naming what feels false. It may be stopping one thing that is clearly not working. It may be making a little more room before making a declaration. For example, you might realize that a friendship you've maintained for a decade is actually draining you. The summer approach is to maybe have a big confrontation and potentially end it. The threshold approach is simply to stop initiating contact and see what happens. You don't need a 5-year plan. You just need to stop forcing the old routine. When people do not know what comes next, the instinct is often to force a new identity before the old one is fully loosened. You do not need a new performance. You need enough space to tell the truth. And here is the part easily overlooked. The first move is not about finding the answer. It's actually about quieting the noise long enough to hear what you already know. When you are in a threshold space, specific behaviors show up. In summer to autumn, you may try to work harder when you actually need discernment. Between autumn and winter, you may hold on tighter when you actually need to let go. Between winter to spring, you may feel sudden urges when the real work is still below the surface. In spring to summer, life moves faster than your sense of direction. In every one of those thresholds, the noise is what keeps you stuck. When you do not know what comes next, the first right move is not to force a full plan. It is to make room for a more honest read. Once you understand that, you stop treating uncertainty like failure. You can begin moving before everything is clear. Name what feels false. Stop what is clearly not working. Notice what brings relief rather than what just looks impressive. Give yourself enough space to see what remains once you stop forcing the old routine. That is not passivity. That is how honest direction begins to form. If this framework is helping you make sense of where you are, please consider subscribing. New videos are published 2 to 3 times a week, and this is the work we get to explore together. A lot of unnecessary suffering comes from demanding final clarity before taking an honest first step. Most of the time, the first move tells the truth a little more clearly than the day before. It may be the decision to stop over-explaining what you already know, or to stop volunteering for a role that no longer fits, or to stop calling something a rough patch when it has clearly become a deeper mismatch. That may not look dramatic, but it changes the inner relationship completely, because now you are no longer waiting for perfect certainty to grant yourself permission to move. You are letting honesty lead first. And that is usually how the path starts to become visible, not all at once, one honest step at a time. What is one small thing you already know is no longer working, even if you do not know the full plan yet? Tell me in the comments. In the next episode, we go deeper into what misalignment actually does to your life from the inside out. That video is called Why Turning 50 Made Me Look Back at Everything, and it'll be on your screen. This work that we're doing here matters. You matter, and I thank you for showing up. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.